Hi folks, it's Bob from Mountain Crest Farms. Oh, today is a nice day. Of course, every day is a great day as far as I'm concerned. I'm above ground and breathing, that's all it takes. Everything after that is just a bonus. But today's a nice day. It's overcast, lightly overcast, and that means it'll keep the heat out of the house because I still haven't worked on the air conditioner. But it's not so overcast that there's any chance of rain, so it's not going to get all muggy and humid today. Be a nice day. Oh, I love my viewers. Nona Grace, yeah, I'm talking about you today. I commented on her video yesterday, day before, talking about North versus South, because I had mentioned how the Southerners were so friendly in one of my a couple videos ago. And she talked about how, yeah, she and some of her girlfriends had found that out when they were young and before they were married and traveling in the South. And I told her I was going to tell a story on North versus South. It's not really North versus South. Well, yeah, I'll include one of those too. But first, I got to tell you a story on a Yankee, okay? I'm going to tell you this story on a Yankee that I saw in a Waffle House up here in North Georgia on Interstate 75, Waffle House. And everybody knows about Waffle House. It's not just a Southern thing anymore. Although it was started here in Atlanta. I say here in Atlanta. Atlanta's about 60, 75 miles south of me. And that's where Waffle House started. And this Waffle House was up almost to the Tennessee line on Interstate 75. And anybody who's from Chicago, Detroit, up in the Midwest, upper Midwest, Indiana, up in there, when you go to Florida, you know Interstate 75 down through Atlanta. Well, this was, oh God, in the 80s. I was sitting in the Waffle House. I was driving a truck at the time. And I had stopped at this Waffle House to get a cup of coffee and relax just a few minutes before I hit the road again. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And in walked a family, mom, dad, and 2 kids. 3 o'clock in the morning, tired, you could tell they were whipped. And they sat down at the table back to back with me. And they were getting the kids settled and everything. The waitress came over and asked them if they'd like some coffee, and they said yeah. And they mentioned that they had been on the road since he got off work a little bit early the day before, on their way to Florida. And on the way to Florida for vacation. And they were driving straight through. And they were just stopping. We're still about, 5 or 6 hours from the Florida line where we were sitting. And then they were probably going down somewhere around Disney World, down the middle of Florida. I don't know. They might have been going to Panama City, northern Florida. But they were going somewhere down there. And they stopped in, same reason I did, get some coffee, get the eyes open, feed the kids, and then be on their way. So the waitress brought them their coffee. And she stood there and she had her little pad out and she said, "What can I get for y'all?" And mom ordered for the kids and she ordered for herself, and the waitress turned to the husband and said, "And what can I get for you?" He looked at her and he said, "I pretty much know what I want. I know I want a couple of fried eggs and some bacon, some toast, but I see grits on here." And he said, "I've always heard about grits. I've never had any, but I've always heard about grits. And I don't want to order a whole order of grits and then find out I don't like them and waste my money and waste the food. So could you bring me a grit and let me see what it tastes like?" Oh, he didn't want a whole order. He just wanted a grit to see if he was going to like it. I thought the waitress was going to fall on the floor laughing. if I hadn't been sitting in a booth, I would have fallen on the floor laughing. And there was one or two other people sitting at the counter. If you've been in a Waffle House, you know they're laid out, how they're laid out. And there was one or two other folks in there, probably drunks that had closed up the local bars, sitting on the stools at the counter. Everybody was laughing. And this guy can't figure out what's wrong. He can't figure out what he said that was so funny. And he looked at the waitress with this funny looking look on his face. And she finally composed herself and she says, "Yeah, I'll be glad to bring you a grit. I'll be right back." She did. She brought a spoon back, and out there on the very tip end of the spoon was, you guessed it, a grit. And he looked at that, and he looked at her, and by this time I'm halfway turned around in the booth, because I'll talk to anybody. By this point I'm halfway turned around in the booth, and I said, "I know you think that waitress is picking on you and making fun of you, but she is not. What you see on that spoon is a grit. So if you want a sample to see if you're going to like it, I think you're going to need more than a grit." I said, "Down here in the South, we eat grits. Now, if you want something to compare it with from up north, think cream of wheat." He shook his head. He said, "Okay, I understand now." So she brought him a spoonful of grits. He tried them. He said they're okay, but they're kind of flavorless. I said, "Well, yeah, they're flavorless. Most people down here they butter them up pretty heavy, and most people down here put salt and pepper on them." I said, "I eat grits the Yankee way, even though I'm son of the South, raised in Georgia." I said, "I eat grits the Yankee way. I turn them yellow with butter, and then I put sugar on them." And I thought the waitress, again, was going to fall over. She looked at me, she said, "You sound Southern, but you can't be Southern if you put sugar on your grits." I said, "Well, you wouldn't think so, but I am Southern, at least since I was 9 years old." I was born up north. I was born in Ohio, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, right outside of Dayton. My dad was stationed there when I was born. Stayed there for 16 months, then Alaska for 3 years, South Dakota for 5 years. Wound up in Valdosta, Georgia when I was 9 years old, and I've been a Georgia boy ever since. And my parents are both from Memphis, Tennessee, so I can claim Southern. I don't care how I eat my grits. But another thing about South versus North that I had mentioned in my video the other day, and Nona Grace and I back and forth a little bit on, she mentioned it in her video too, was the friendliness of Southerners. And I don't know why. It might be going way back to Civil War days when not many people liked the South, but we're friendly. We're friendly to everybody. I don't have to know you. I don't have to know your name. I don't have to even recognize your face as having seen it before. Walking down the street, it's automatic. Somebody walking the other way on the sidewalk, "Hey, how you doing today?" Which comes back, "Fine, how you doing today?" Or in my case, "Awesome, I hope you're doing the same." We just do that. The closest I've come to that up north, my first wife and I were in New York City one time. Yes, I do like going to New York City as a tourist. About 5 or 6 days, once every 4 or 5 years is about all I can stand. And I hadn't been there now in the last 15 years. But I used to go about every 3, 4, 5 years. Did the touristy thing. Last time I was in New York City, the Twin Towers were still standing. I like doing the touristy thing. I've been to the top of the Empire State Building a dozen times. I've been to Times Square a dozen times. I've been to the top of the World Trade Center when it was still standing at least half a dozen times. some of my favorite restaurants are in New York City. I love the food up there. Little Italy, Chinatown, Carnegie Deli. Oh God, I love Carnegie Deli. Sadly, it closed in the last couple of years. Tavern on the Green. Talk about good food. Tavern on the Green, and it closed up. It went bankrupt, but I've heard that it has reopened. But the food up there is just awesome, and you don't even have to go in a restaurant. I love the food on the street. The street vendors have some really good food. But anyway, I was talking about my second ex-wife, excuse me, it's my second ex-wife. And I were walking down the street. This would have been in 1995. It's my 40th birthday. She took me to New York for my 40th birthday. We were in the audience all week long for the taping of the old Rush Limbaugh TV show. Yes, I'm a ditto head. We were walking down the street one day before the taping because it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. And this guy walked straight up to my wife, and I thought, uh-oh, here we go, about to get started. We stopped, and he reached out, and he nice and slowly and gently put his hand behind a necklace my wife was wearing. It was laying in his hand. He wasn't touching her, he had his hand out. And he said, ma'am, I couldn't believe he said ma'am. He said, ma'am, you don't do that in New York City. He said, you're a tourist, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, you don't do that in New York City. Somebody's going to come up and they're going to put their hand back behind that necklace like I just did, close their hand, jerk, and run. And they're going to be gone, and so's the necklace, and there won't be a thing you can do about it. You either put that necklace inside your top or take it off and put it in your purse. I thanked him. He looked at me and he said, you know, tourists that come to New York don't like people panhandling, and I don't panhandle, but don't you think that was worth something? I said, yes, I do. It wasn't an expensive bracelet, necklace. It wasn't expensive at all, but I reached my wallet and gave him $20 just for the way he acted. But that's the only time I've ever had somebody, total stranger, just walk up and be a nice person. And not just New York, Chicago, Detroit. I don't care too much for big cities anyway. I don't like Atlanta, but I sure don't like northern big cities. I'll tell you another little short story about North versus South from my teenage years. Like I say, I'm from Valdosta. My dad retired from the Air Force, and we built a motel in Valdosta. And that motel was built in downtown Valdosta. We catered to commercial traffic, traveling salesmen. So we weren't out on the interstate. We were right downtown Valdosta. And across the street from us was an auto parts place that also had a machine shop. Back then, you know, independent auto parts stores usually had a machine shop. They could work on heads and blocks and Magnaflux blocks looking for cracks and all sorts of things. And this one had a machine shop. And I was about 18 years old. And they had a kid over there working, black kid, over there working that was, he was a year or two older than me, but he was roughly my age. Over there working, and he and I were friends, and we cut up back and forth across the street. I'd holler across the street, and if this makes somebody mad, I'm sorry, but I'd holler across the street, hey you N-word, what are you doing today? And he'd yell back at me, nothing, you stupid cracker, and then we'd decide where we were going to go fishing that afternoon. Well, he disappeared one summer, and about 6 months later, he's back, working across the street again. And I went over there and I asked him, I said, where you been for the last 6 months? He said, well, I was born and raised right here in Valdosta, and I pay attention to the news, and all this about how racist the South was and how much better it was for black people up north. He said, I've got an uncle that lives in Chicago. And I decided I was going to get away from this racist South. So I went up to live with my uncle in Chicago. I said, well, how'd that work out for you? He said, I found out that people down here aren't racist. He said, yeah, people down here will call me a nigger, but they treat me nice. Everybody down here is nice. It's that southern thing. I threw in that, it's that southern thing. He didn't say that. He just said, people down here treat me nice. And went up to Chicago, and in 6 months, I never heard the word nigger. Never heard it. But I was treated like the lowest form of life on the face of the earth by all the white people. He said, I learned a long time ago that you need to pay attention to how people act, not how they talk. What they do is a lot more important than what they say. And based on what people do, I'm back here in the South, and this is where I'm going to stay. So, I'm going to call it about a day for that, and I hope using that word in the video. I started to leave it out and just say the N-word. But you needed to know just exactly what he said. But that's about it for today's video. And by the way, y'all are going to watch this video being not edited. That'll be another video in about a week. But you're going to watch how to do video SEO, make YouTube like you, on this video. Because I'm going to go in and edit it and upload it. And then do a video to show y'all how to get YouTube to show your videos a little love and throw some people your way. Until then, y'all have an absolutely fantastic day. And remember 2 things. 1, he is alive. And 2, the tomb was empty. And I said those backwards, but it doesn't matter. Yes, the tomb was empty. And yes, he is alive. If y'all like the video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe down there. Hit the little bell so you get notifications. And come back and see me next time. Y'all have a fantastic day. I'm going to.